So welcome and thank you for joining us for the Environmental Innovations Practical Decision Making for Climate Action. This is the Global Impact Forum session, day 2 of the UN Global Compact Uniting Business Live. My name is Zubair Nwabawani, and it's great to be here with my fellow Global Compact colleagues from local networks Nigeria, Pakistan and UAE. Before we jump into this lively interactive discussion with our esteemed participants, I'd like to first thank and ask all of our participants to focus their use of the chat feature, which is just on the right-hand side, to share questions or thoughts on the discussion. We're actually at a milestone moment, in fact. This year celebrates 75 years of the United Nations, but also 20 years of the UN Global Compact. And this is an opportune time for us to say thank you. Thank you to all those champions that have played a great part in making the world a little bit better. So once again, thank you for your support, and we hope that that support is ongoing. So this session is part of the opening hour of the first ever Global Impact Forum. This forum is focused on pragmatic discussion and examples of how to quickly drive the decade of action forward in these precarious times. Companies can start to take action by implementing the UNGC environmental principles to promote more environmental sustainability through taking a precautionary approach and working with others. We know climate change is already having severe impacts across our systems and impacting our oceans, and freshwater systems. And that's resulting in rising sea levels, increasing water-related natural disasters, and subsequent droughts. At the same time, we are confronted with the coronavirus, COVID-19, a global pandemic that is devastating people and their livelihoods, disrupting supply chains, profoundly deepening inequalities, and undoing progress of the SDGs. So today we are here with 4 business leaders to discuss innovations and actions for positive change. We expect it to be a lively discussion. So to our panelists, just relax, sit back, make yourself comfortable. We have with us Mohammed Al-Shamsi, Chief Officer, Climate Change and Sustainability at Dubai Electric and Water Authority. We have Lady Cheta Nubwiki, apologies if I've pronounced it incorrectly, Group ESG Director at Cummins Energy Solutions Nigeria. Asad Surti, Executive Director at Surti Enterprises Pakistan, and Ombalane Victor Lanyan, Head of Sustainability at Access Bank. So if everyone's comfortable, I'd like to begin. Let's get started with the first question. So, quite simply, how do the environmental principles and the global goals help drive decision making? Asad, if we start with you first.
Yeah, sure. You can hear me fine?
Yeah.
We can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
I can hear you, but I'm not sure, okay?
Perfect. I guess I'll just begin in any case. So I think I personally believe that there's a lot of, it's a very vast area, sustainability and the environment in itself, because it doesn't just cover one facet of the organization, but pretty much every aspect of it. And because of that, there's also a lot of greenwashing that happens. And there's a lack of standardization in this space in general. And I think the environmental principles help to standardize that, and it helps to bring a single common platform and a common goal to mind for a lot of organizations. So it helps to drive things in a focused way, in a focused direction. Our company in the last 4 or 5 years have 3 to 4 years, I guess, has started focusing a lot on sustainability. Most of our investments now are geared in that direction. And I'll come to that later, but our industry in particular is dirty. It's not so sustainable in the long run. So our investments are geared in that direction, and the SDGs, the goals, they help to drive us and towards that direction and help to keep our customers the end consumers and the rest of our supply chain on the same page as well.
Okay. Okay, that's quite an interesting.
I lost you.
We lost you, Zubair.
Okay, I think there's just a time delay. Thank you, Asad. I think I was just responding to that. That I think clearly there's a distinction and a connection between how the SDGs are clearly shaping your decision making, because you can see the end result, not just in terms of environmental impact, but the impact and the connectivity you have with customers and suppliers as well. So it kind of lends itself very well to, it just makes sense to follow this kind of principled approach. Naomi, I know you've got some questions. I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Ombalane, what's your take on this? How do the environmental principles and the global goals help drive your decision making?
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that there's a strong relationship, right, between business decision making and environmental principles. And the global goals were developed, with the role of business being factored in terms of coming in, partnering with public sector, and
can anybody hear me?
Influencing really business.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Cheddar.
Okay, because I seem to be having a bad connection.
Can I go on?
Yeah, please carry on.
Please. Sorry about that.
But I also don't seem to be getting the questions.
Can I go on, please?
If I could ask,
Yes, you can. Sorry about that.
please continue. If someone could just help Cheta with the question in the chat panel. Ombalane, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So, in trying to explain how environmental principles and global goals help drive decision making, I started by saying that, first of all, we are and may be aware that there's a strong relationship between business decision making and environmental principles, and that the global goals have been developed, right, with the role of business factored in. The goals largely influence business decision making in many organizations. So, bringing this back down to the environment, we find that globally business decisions are among the dominant influences that are shaping environmental conditions. So in terms of taking decisions around what materials to use in your organization for your manufacturing or energy usage, or even organisms that are being extracted, from the environment, in what quantity, where and how they'll be transported and distributed, landscapes, ecosystems that'll be transformed in doing so. We see that business plays a big role, right, in terms of then deciding how to minimize and mitigate the impact. So, and if I drill down to Access Bank's example, the initial speaker spoke about considering environmental issues. Same applies within Access Bank. So we understand the role and the interlinkages between business decisions, the global goals, and environmental principles. So we assess all of our credits. We do an environmental assessment of all credits before we go ahead to, give those credits to customers or potential customers. And, our commitment to SDGs and environmental principles, such as the UNGC, is really, really influenced by our efforts to promote environmental sustainability. And I'll go into details on that at a later time. But just to mention at this point is the reason why, for instance, Access Bank was the first, issued the first CBI Climate Bond Initiative certified corporate green bond in Africa. And as a result of our environmentally responsible business decisions. We also joined several other financial institutions to develop and launch at this time last year the Global Principles for Responsible Banking under the platform of the UNEP Finance Initiative. However, it's important that and is necessary for coordinating bodies like UNGC and UNEP to substantially expand support for research to truly understand the influence of environmental principles in business decisions. Thank you.
Wow, excellent. That's some really useful and helpful insight, and how the connectivity between your environmental approach is not just about reducing your footprint, how decision-making goes to lending criteria. And I'm seeing a couple of other goals there being tapped in as well. And we talk about creating opportunities and creating inclusivity. And I think that's the beauty of the global goals and sort of wrapping it around your whole decision-making process. So thank you for that. Very useful insight. Mohammed Al-Shamsi, same question to you. How do the principles...
Yes, thank you very much, of course, for giving us the opportunity to present. Now, when we talk about this question, and does it drive decision-making for an organization, we have to distinguish on what sort of organization in terms of maturity, of course, and do they have a well-established system in terms of driving strategy, setting the proper vision for an organization, how this organization is set up. If I talk about Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, the way we operate, we look at the local government, let's say, directives in terms of vision of the Emirate Dubai would look like and how we can align as an organization to that. Then we look at the federal level for the United Arab Emirates and what are the strategies there and how we can ensure that we are aligned with the overall federal strategy. Now, as consider it a mature organization, of course, we have proper visions set for the organization, including the mission, proper set of KPIs also included. We have the balanced scorecard system used by Norton Kaplan, basically to look at what are the major objectives and KPIs. Now, elevating and including the linkage to the Sustainable Development Goals and the UN Global Compact with its principle, if we talk about the environmental aspects here, we would talk about the principle 7, 8, and 9. Of course, we saw a lot of benefit to give us a better understanding in terms of how we can align and contribute as an organization to the local government and ultimately, of course, contributing to the global goals. Now, a lot of organizations as ours or environmental assessment considerations either on the legal aspect enforced by a government to take care of the environment in certain aspects, or as corporate social responsibility to maintain their image as an organization that takes care of the environment. It depends and the nature of the environment, let's say the legal environment where the organization operates. I would give a personal experience on how the SDGs impacted us in the UN Global Compact. Before us getting to understand and map the Sustainable Development Goals, we had very clear strategies with regards to carbon abatement strategy. We have the demand side management strategy. This is, of course, on Dubai level. There are several strategies on the federal level. And then you scale it down to the strategy map where we introduce the triple bottom line concept, where we balance the pillars of sustainability, environment, social, and economic, which wasn't introduced previously. It was part of our development and maturing towards the environment. Then came the Sustainable Development Goal. We started getting engaged with the local federal authorities that, let's say, drive the United Arab Emirates file in the United Nations, SDGs, the Conference of Parties regarding climate change. We started to evaluate certain goals. Our understanding was to focus on the areas that are relevant to electricity and water. But by doing a proper mapping, the information is available, of course, in the website. We started to realize that as an organization, we not only contribute to water, energy or smart infrastructure. We also can contribute to aspects regarding gender equality, regarding certain areas that we are even surprised that we can contribute as an organization. That enabled us to provide a better contribution for the federal authority responsible for the United Arab Emirates file, of course. Now, some of the areas that started getting tweaks, let's say, we started having a more global perspective in terms of evaluating our strategy on frequent basis and upgrading maybe our strategy map to include elements to that. Our next step now is to for the Sustainable Development Goals on organization level. We're working towards closing certain gaps in terms of introduction of new key performance indicators for the organization, and also look at new initiatives that would fill in the gap as an organization for us to, let's say, contribute to that. I don't want to take more time from my colleagues, but what I'm mainly is, if you're a mature organization, you can benefit definitely from the SDGs and the UN Global Compact. And if you are an organization interested to benefit from those and you're not that mature in the market, let's say, everything is available and there is no excuse not to look into those details and ask the proper questions, because the platforms available can answer all those questions for those organizations, guiding them into having a proper business model to be environmentally friendly and profitable at the same time, of course.
Great. Thank you, Mohammed. And I think that's a ringing endorsement of why organizations should adopt the SDGs. And you can see the linkages. As you said, it's not just environmental, it links into gender as well. And of course, the platform is extensive and available to, as you said, mature organizations who are looking at reflection and review, a new direction, but also new companies who are looking at adopting the principles. Chet, I'll come over to you and ask you the same question. So just to remind you of what the question is, how do the environmental principles and the global goals help drive decision-making in your organization? You have to unmute.
Unmute yourself, Cheta. Unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Okay, sorry about that. I was saying basically for us, we're in the power sector and we just started taking baby steps in the area of sustainability. Now, of course, we know that environmental sustainability is just one arm of sustainable development, being arm of it. And we have SDGs that are centered around the environment, and we talk of goal 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, these goals are really achievable for us when we align them with the UNGC principles that are centered around the environment. And those are principles 7 basically talk about. Principle 7 talks about taking precautionary measures when we're looking at environmental challenges, and that looks at various areas in risk assessment. For a company like ours that is into provision of power, building power plants, it's important for us that before we commence any project at all, we need to carry out environmental impact assessments to understand the kind of impacts our projects will have on whichever communities where we do our business. Principle 8 talks about taking initiative on being responsible in the area of environmental sustainability. And so for us, gradually we're getting to train our people right from the board level down to the entire workforce on how to be able to take responsibility in terms of the environment. And then the last part, Principle 9, talks about developing friendly technologies that suit the environment. I'm going to talk about that sometime later. But for us, we tend to look at the SDGs and this UNGC principle, not just as a priority or something that is on paper. What we've tried to do is to enshrine it into our own core values. So it makes it easy for us when we're taking decisions. And so, I mean, if it becomes a part of, like us, where it's become a part of our organizational culture, it's a bit difficult because we know that priorities will always change. Now, if it is a part of our culture, when it comes to taking decisions, we're able to say, okay, we need to align with what is our culture, what is our core value, rather than what is a priority for us. And I'm just going to give you an example. We, in a few months ago, we're going to embark on a project for a client. Now, the target for that, completion date for that target was to have it up and running in 3 months. And the project ahead on that. However, when the ESG department went into the field for us to evaluate what was on ground, we actually found that the land on which we're going to have that project had ferrous oxide buried in that land. The clients didn't even understand the health implications of having those chemicals buried in the land. So for us, it was now a decision to take. I mean, is it our priority to have this project executed within 3 months, or do we need to clean up the land, have a little bit of delay, and do the right thing? For us was to do the right thing. And so we stopped going ahead with that project so that we could clean up the land before going ahead with the project. So, I mean, that sets a clear distinction on what's your priority, what's your core value, and how does it help you to take the proper decision. So once it's a core value, it makes decision making very easy.
Thank you. And I think, I just want to echo your point that this is about doing the right thing. And businesses have to look at the direction that they're moving towards and look at the world that it could help shape. And I think doing the right thing is a core value that most businesses look at, but look at it with like perhaps a different perspective. There's some great insights coming through. We've got some great comments and questions on the chat feature as well. And there's tons of stuff that we need to get through. I'm just conscious of time. So now we've discussed the how. Let's look at what this looks like in practice. I'd like to bring in my colleague from the Nigeria office, Naomi, here. Hi, Naomi. I know you've been waiting patiently. You've got some great questions to ask. So we were discussing earlier how the world, as it is now with its inherent challenges, and its opportunities, provides us all with greater responsibility in sharing the how. And I know, Naomi, you have a question that builds on some of the responses that Asad and Cheta have just given. So over to you. Do you want to ask your question?
Thanks, Zubair. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I'd like for our guests today to share with us some practical examples of innovations that demonstrate a commitment to working together to bring to life the environmental principles of the UN Global Compact, as this will help others and inspire them in their journey. So I'll start with you, Asad.
I have a lot of practical examples, and I'm going to try to keep it short and just give a few of them. And I'm going to start with one of the partnerships that we did in order to try and create the most sustainable jeans so far created. And that was with this organization known as Cradle to Cradle. And Cradle to Cradle is actually, it's a book that's written by this, it's like he's a sustainability researcher and expert. And it's a philosophy to create products. It could be jeans, it could be furniture, it could be anything at all, in a totally sustainable and circular manner so that they can regenerate after the end of life. Jeans typically have a lot of issues and you can't always regenerate them. So the C2C program is extremely rigorous and it's thorough, it's holistic, and it helps to create a pair of denims which doesn't have any polyester. It uses a special type of elastane, which is biodegradable, and it covers social fairness. The jeans that we made is made through a special process that doesn't utilize water, or it utilizes much less water than a jeans typically does. So we partnered with C2C and we produced this C2C jean. And for us, we combined that with a digital launch. So we produced a digital garment along with it, as opposed to a physical garment for the launch. And the idea behind that was that there's a big focus now on digital sampling. So you don't need to actually make the physical garment when you're just sampling. You can just make a digital render of it and use that as a means to confirm the orders. And that can lead to a lot of sustainability savings as well. So these two things combined was just an example of one of the most sustainable products that we produced to try and inspire other people to do the same thing. And besides that, we've seen that being part of the whole value chain, we've seen that generally speaking, fashion industry creates a lot of waste. All the clothes that we're buying, they end up going in landfills most of the times. In fact, I believe one garbage truck clothing waste is dumped in a landfill every second. That's the stat that is usually thrown around. So to try and overcome that, we actually produced a recycling plant, and we import used denims or even other kinds of cotton products. We shred them in-house, and we produce this regenerated cotton, which we mix and blend with our virgin cotton, and we make post-consumer waste jeans. So these are other examples in which we have tried to be more sustainable. This industry, especially the fast fashion one, has a lot of water consumption as well. And at Surti, we have a special process which we researched and created, in which we are actually using much less water to dye our jeans as opposed to the usual process. One jeans is actually consuming 5,000 liters of water to produce from cotton to end of life. So by recycling the cotton and using our zero wastewater process, we're able to reduce the amount of water consumed to produce one pair of jeans. Besides that, I would want to quickly mention another initiative that we're doing, and I believe this is indirectly extremely effective. And it's a very simple initiative, but it's essentially a platform to, we call it the Future Possibilities Platform. And in this platform, we try to engage consumers as well as other stakeholders on sustainability education. And we have small pop-up shops throughout the world. We also have different talks in this physical space known as Denim City in Amsterdam. We partner with the Jean School in Amsterdam to try and just impart more and more knowledge on sustainability. We bring different people on board, sustainable coffee producers as well, and other people in the space to try and just create more awareness about it in the world. And once I believe we are able to create awareness about it, we're able to get the demand pull. And once you can create that demand pull for a sustainable product, I think you will be able to kickstart and spur a lot of people to convert to more sustainable production.
Thank you so much, Asad. You still speaking? Thank you so much anyways for the interest of time. Thank you for such wonderful innovations and examples. So I'll move over to Omobolale.
Thank you very much, Naomi, for that question. I think I should start by saying that innovation, sustainability, and collaboration are all related, right, in the effort to help us manage, multiple dimensions of organizational and institutional policies and practices. And having said that, right, I'll just give examples around Access Bank, where, we've collaborated with various stakeholders and built models under our Waste to Wealth initiatives, which is under the Going Green concept of Access Bank. I have a range of examples, but I'll just give a few. The first one I would give is, our partnership with an organization known as SME Funds, which is a social enterprise. And I mean, it does two things really. Is first, ends poverty by promoting sustainable enterprise development. But on the more related notes, is that it helps to green right, or to help nature to recover itself. So back here in Nigeria, especially in the rural communities, you find that a lot of women fell trees and use that to cook. So by the very nature of felling trees is not friendly to the environment. The very nature of using those trees to cook, coal is not friendly to the environment. So what this initiative seeks to do is to wean them off that entire model and bringing them to a clean cooking stove technology, which uses biogels for cooking. So those biogels are made again from environmental waste, hyacinths. So we convert hyacinth to biogels, and they're used, for the clean stove cooking. So again, weaning people off, their the lifestyle they're used to, and which of course is not friendly to the environment, and bringing them into this green innovation, and also then training and doing capacity building and giving grants to people with a bias for women. So 70% beneficiaries are women, and training them, building their capacity and setting them up in business with this green clean stove technology. So again, addressing more than one of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that another very important one I shouldn't miss out would be our paper to pencil initiative, which we launched, earlier on in 2019 when we merged with Diamond Bank in Nigeria. So we had a lot of paper waste from old branded notebooks from Access and old branded notebooks from the other bank, and we needed to do something with it. And we started talking to our partners, and someone was able to design this machine, this little machine that was able to convert the papers to pencils. So today we've distributed those pencils to over 10,030 students in primary schools across Nigeria. I'll stop at that. Thank you. Okay, maybe I should give one more example. Maybe I should give one more example. Another example.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, one more example.
We'll come back to you. I'm just conscious of time. Very quickly. Okay, Mohammed, if you can, I think Naomi is just having difficulty connecting. So same question to you. Have you got some examples that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Well, maybe a statement before that regarding finding economic sense and business sense about environment. Usually, a lot of people and companies would look at committing to the environment and making sure that we're more friendly towards the environment in terms of resources. Would always be a cost on an organization. But it's the other way around. There's always benefit from adopting it properly, and it makes a lot of business sense in the long term, of course. Now, I thought about this question a lot. There are a lot of examples that I can talk about in terms of innovation, in terms of subsidiaries, in terms of heavy equipment that we have. But I think there's one specific example that shows how you can collaborate and how you can create a market. We have a company which we call Ittihad Energy Service Company, or we call it as Ittihad Super ESCO. Now, this goes back to the example that I talked about by setting proper strategies on a city level that would enable the platform for businesses and government entities interact properly. So there was a target on Dubai Emirate level to retrofit 30,000 old buildings and make them more energy efficient, mainly to reduce emissions, to reduce stress, of course, in providing electricity and water, and making sure that they operate in a very good manner. Now, when we wanted to look for companies that would apply those projects and support those 30,000 buildings, we didn't utilize energy service company to provide those services for the buildings in Dubai. You would find some of them specialize in the area of air conditioning or chillers, others maybe in lighting. They vary and they're not communicating as a whole. So we decided to create the umbrella, which is, or a super ESCO, coupled with a regulation to protect our consumers by the end in terms of standardizing the services and making sure that they collaborate properly. Basically, we created a market. We created a super ESCO that brings all those small ESCO companies together and provide them with the information that there is a target on Dubai level for 30,000 buildings, business opportunity to work and collaborate together to achieve that. And the interesting aspects also of this model, it provides funding also for the client. So if you own a building, for example, or you're an investor that have a warehouse and you want to retrofit but you don't have the upfront capital, they would facilitate very interesting model to provide financing in collaboration with banks, which makes it very attractive because the contract includes promising savings and return on investment in 2 or 3 years. So basically after 3 years at least, those businesses would gain money rather than, let's say, keep paying electricity and water bills in a very high manner.
Thank you, Mohammed. Over to Cheta.
Thank you. Now, okay, so for our business,
Cheta, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Cheta, yes, we can. Please continue.
You're break.
Okay, all right. So basically, coming to power generation, like I said earlier, is in the power business in Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have a huge deficit of power generation. Currently, as at last month, the national grid was just able to generate a total of 7,000 megawatts for the whole country. And this is a population, we have a population of over 195 million. Now that's a huge deficit to be able to generate power, adequately in Nigeria. So what happens is in our country is that we have the citizenry trying to provide power for themselves, and we find people with all sorts of generators, just to make up to whatever they're able to get from the national. Now, for us,
I think she's having technical difficulties. Cheta, if you can hear us, can you just refresh your Naomi? Yeah, carry on. It sounds like there's a lot of further conversation to have. Asad, with your explanation about the great stuff you're doing. I know I'm just looking at some of the chat comments. There's literally tons of questions around. Okay. So I want to thank Naomi just quickly for framing that question. Oh, Naomi, you're back. You hear us?
Hello.
Yep. Great. Fantastic.
I'm also back. I think
this is great. Fantastic. So,
okay,
Chef,
so can I finish off?
Finish off what you were saying, and then Naomi will come. Please do.
Okay, so what we do is our gas generators use gas. So against using diesel fuel or PMS, what we use gas, natural gas to power our engines. So what this does is it reduces the level of emissions that would otherwise have been emitted through the diesel generators or the PMS generators. Now, one would also think that such engines that are able to deliver up to 1.5 megawatts of power would have it would create a lot of noise pollution. But what we also have in our engines is that the engines are attenuated in such a way that it's able to reduce the noise that it generates to a reasonable level, at least to safety levels that are acceptable worldwide. So with these two innovations, we have been able to use gas, which is much safer in terms of emission, also to be able to reduce noise. I mean, those are the innovations that come with our business.
Okay, thank you very much, Chika. Thank you all for sharing such wonderful. Could you just please put yourself on mute? Thank you. Thank you all for sharing such goals. It is interesting to see that companies in the UN Global Compact in our various country networks are leading examples in taking action to address environmental issues. And that is what the United Nations is about, a movement of sustainable businesses to align their. So we're very happy to see the practical examples and beautiful innovations you're taking to scale up the environmental principles. So I'll hand it over to Zubair now to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you all. Great examples there. I just touched upon the surface
Zubair,
of many of the. Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I think we've touched upon many of the innovations.
Zubair, are you there?
Yes, I'm.
Can I continue?
If everyone can hear me, just show me.
Cheta, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think great examples of innovation and creative thinking, and I think this is just a tip of the iceberg, as they say. There's a great road ahead.
I think the internet is pretty poor. Can you hear me, Cheta?
Great deal in that. We can. Okay, so I'm just going to move on. Thanks, Naomi, for framing that question. I'm already seeing lots of synergies and a number of the points that were discussed. What Ats said, what Mohammed said, they connect well with many of the things that we've already been talking about. And of course, we've looked at committed, responsible business decisions in action. And this, it strikes me as to how it ties in with what Secretary General Guterres' recent reflections on public-private sector collaboration. So it's really good to see that now being in action. Secretary General has asked businesses and a call for multilateralism to not just encompass government to government, but rather to have a strong link to the private sector. He's also called for the whole responsible business community to be bold and brave. And I'm really excited to see some of those bold, brave innovations taking place amongst our panel here. With that in mind, I'd like to hear from all four of you just quickly on obviously a question that everyone's asking. How do you feel COVID-19 has impacted innovation through your business and the notion of a public-private partnership? So some of the examples that you have faced recently in terms of your business to government conversations, business with civil service, civil society conversations, do you think COVID-19 has played a role in impacting that. So we'll start with Mohammed first, and then Asad, if you can follow.
Okay. Now, when we talk about how COVID-19 impacted innovation, it's a bit a hard question because we're still facing issues of COVID-19, and you see different innovative approaches from different organizations globally. So to have a clear cut or clear answer how there's an impact, it might be hard. But what we observed, honestly, that this phase that we're going through, and we will win by the end, inshallah, is showing how resilient the organizations are, and businesses and companies, and how they can adapt with those challenges. Add to that, it tested the technology aspect in terms of utilizing the tools that are already available a couple of years back, but now they became essential for day-to-day business. I'm talking about video conferencing and what we're doing today. That showed that a lot can be done rather than wasting just money flying around and gathering and emitting CO2, let's say, in different areas. So that tested organizations on how they're resilient in that matter. It tested governments, how they react to that matter. And also, you can see that businesses are trying to understand, or actually they're starting to understand that you can do a lot by introducing new models of business rather than having thousands of people in one building. You can have them working from home. You can create a new business model in terms of how you can evaluate the efficiency and productivity of employees from what's happening currently. Interactions between entities, I would give maybe an example of two. One of them is the charitable, as my capacity in the charitable organization that I work for, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, who's the Prime Minister of United Arab Emirates and ruler of Dubai, rolled out an initiative to provide 10 million meals for people in need in the Ramadan time, and also when the impact hit very hard this area. Now, that included amazing collaboration between the charitable organizations, the government entities, the police departments, and even the private sector started getting involved. I would give examples like Kareem, Uber. We had Carrefour, which is one of the major hypermarkets here in UAE, making sure we can deliver meals, we can deliver food supplies immediately for people in need. And it was an amazing, wonderful example that was shown at a very strict time, let's say, of need. So you can see different things, but I'm sure we will see more examples, and we will see a shift in the business sector in terms of how they think and operate in the future, and maybe the introduction of new business sectors, let's say, that would affect the economy and make more business sense, let's say, for them to operate, considering the environmental aspects as well. I think every one of you heard or saw in the news how different areas of the world started getting cleaner. Venice, for the first time in our life, we started seeing blue waters in between the buildings. Air quality has improved in different areas. So a lot of people are starting to think that there is a way to operate in a highly effective, efficient manner, and maintaining maybe also the environment and making sure we protect it properly for generations to come. And a lot of good opportunities are coming in terms of how the public sector can interact with the private sector in a more advanced and sophisticated manner to see a good outcome behind it, of course.
Great. Thank you, Mohammed.
A question, because I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, Asad, same question to you. How do you feel COVID-19 innovation and public-private partnerships? So relationships with government, relationship with stakeholders.
This is
Thanks.
Assad.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I missed you earlier. It was breaking up, but I understood the question now. Thank you for repeating. So actually, our industry has been affected by COVID. Initially, there was a couple of really, really bad months in which I think the whole industry was at idle capacity. That was just for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. And then once the stores opened, things got better. The impact on innovation, I'd say the biggest one is on the digitization of our industry. People are still working from home in Europe, and we're not able to present our collections because our product is physical. So to decide what you want to produce, typically you produce a sample and you send it to the office, or you go visit with a collection and you show it to them. But because people are working from home and we're not allowed to have large gatherings in any case, we've actually begun making digital samples, and I mentioned this earlier, but this has kickstarted the 3D and virtual sampling industry. Now our company has avatars so there's avatars of the fit that the customer provides us with. He gives us the specs of the body type, and we produce the sample on the computer. We scan the fabric that we were going to use. We make the whiskers and the washing effects on the computer, and we make the digital avatar wear the jeans, and the digital avatar tells us where it's tight for her and where it's, maybe she would hip based on the spec that we had provided. And then we make them walk, bend, sit, see how it drapes, how it falls. These things were kind of going on. They were going in slow-mo before, and because of COVID, it was a necessity. So our company's been, in fact, we had started this a little bit from before, but as soon as COVID happened, the investments in this direction picked up. And that's actually very good for sustainability, because the sample producing process, samples are sent via air through DHL to our buyers in Europe and the US. So there's a lot of transport, and we all know that the air travel industry has a lot of carbon emissions. So does the maritime industry, but in both cases, sea or air. When samples are produced digitally, you're producing less, you're generating less waste, and you're using less energy. That's one of the main things that I would say. And the second thing that I would say, it's interestingly, and I don't know if this has happened across the supply chain and across other companies, but for us, it's kind of like on the bright side of COVID, necessity has almost bred innovation. The pressure to perform has become so much more, considering the lower prices. All retailers are having to put discounts. They're asking us for higher, better prices. Besides that, our capacities have fallen. So in order to stay competitive, we've had to really become more efficient, and we have. And I credit COVID for that, honestly. Like the environment was so decisive and derisive that we kind of had to innovate. Besides that, our government has actually, on the public-private partnership side, I don't have any specific examples yet, and there hasn't really been much, except due to COVID, the government released a refinance facility for businesses so they can get access to cheap finance and liquidity. And that's been good. That's a conversation that happened as a result of a conversation between government and business.
Which may not happen under normal circumstances, perhaps.
Yeah, it would not have, and it's just for a year, so it's going to end in March, because apparently COVID, they've given it a year. So.
Okay, great. Thank you, Asad. Some really helpful insights there. Cheta, just quickly from you and then over to you, Ambalani. I'm conscious of time. We've still got a few more questions to ask from our chat box as well. So Cheta, if you could just give an example of how you feel COVID has impacted your relationships with the public sector and the private sector.
You're muted.
You'll have to unmute.
for us, thank you, Zubair. So for us, basically, I mean, so much has been said about the negative impact of COVID, but one innovation that has come out for us, at least in Nigeria, is that with the decline in the sale of crude, which, I mean, Nigeria is a mono economy. Basically, what we just do is to export crude. Now, with the decline of that sale, the government has had to look at other ways of raising foreign exchange. And one of the initiatives they came up with is an initiative called Nigerian Gas Expansion Program. Now, what this tends to do is, because the government is not able to subsidize fuel anymore for the common man. There's been a hike in the fuel price. So, I mean, that's also creating in terms of transportation and transportation costs. So what the government has come out to do now is say, okay, you know what, let's provide an alternative to using AGO or to using PMS, and that's to use natural gas. So one of our sister companies, Gas, has been earmarked as one of the companies that will be taking up that program. So at the end of the day, vehicle users can go into any filling station, and instead of using or buying AGO or PMS, they would buy natural gas to fuel their cars. This is relatively new in Nigeria, and I think, I mean, if it wasn't for COVID, we probably wouldn't have been thinking of going this way. And we know that using natural gas is a lot safer in terms of emission, and then in terms of cost, is actually 50% cheaper than what we currently have as the price of PMS in Nigeria.
Okay. Interesting. Ombolani, same question to you. How do you feel COVID-19 has impacted your relationship in terms of partnerships or conversations with government?
Thank you. I mean, clearly, COVID-19 definitely accelerated innovation and investment and public-private partnerships. And I mean, the example of Access Bank was that immediately COVID got into the country, we established the coalition against COVID, bringing together other private sector organizations and then working, with government, relevant government agencies to combat, coronavirus in Nigeria. And prior to this, the country did not have the capacity for testing for, the populace and all of that. So what we immediately did was to increase the testing capacity in the country. We set up state-of-the-art COVID testing and treatment centers, right? And we provided health system relief projects, right, that would help ensure that the situation does not deteriorate further. I mean, just very recently, the Coalition Against COVID, CACOVID, purchased foodstuffs worth about 23 billion naira, which is currently being distributed as palliatives across 1.7 million households in all of the 774 local governments, across Nigeria. And I should, at this point say that since COVID-19, there's been increased attention on the need for infrastructure development, particularly in terms of providing greener solutions to help, organizations adapt to the new normal. So there are a lot of other examples around, the new way of working and various initiatives that were not, may have materialized, but not as quickly as now prior to COVID. Thank you.
Great. Well, what I'm sort of hearing is that COVID is or ships and line. it's allowed it's about collaborating, aligning, using expertise, looking at innovative use of resources themselves for a common cause or purpose, if you like. So I'm really delighted to see that. So we're kind of at the end of our conversation. We've got a few minutes left. I think what we're hearing is absolutely fascinating.
Zubair, I don't know if it's me, but I can't hear you.
Maybe you, Zubair, we can hear you. The connection is stressed.
Can you?
We can't hear you, Zubair. We can't hear.
No. Can you hear me now? Any better?
Yes, better now.
It's better now.
Better now? Yeah. So did you hear the question?
No.
No.
Okay. So let me repeat. So what advice can you give to other businesses who are thinking of climate action in terms of practical decision-making advice? What things could they be doing based on your experience? Asad, if we start with you.
I think the first advice that I would give to other businesses is to be brave and do the research to begin with. You'll be surprised at what technologies are out there and how there isn't always a big cost difference. Sometimes there's a bit of a cost difference, but there's so many other offsets which are beneficial for you. The other thing that I would say is that consider sustainability in your local context always. Different countries have different issues, different areas have different issues. In Pakistan, especially in Karachi, we have a lot of a water shortage. And that's why we focus a lot on water conservation in our company. And I think that pays back because in the long term, you think 5 years, 10 years down the line, and when there's shortages like that, when there's issues like this, governments step in, take action. The price of water is going to rise in Pakistan. And even if recycling may not make complete sense right now, it will definitely be extremely viable a few years down the line. Same with solar power. You do enough research and you can get, most of the time it's actually effective. It depends on obviously where you are, the weather, and stuff like that, and the energy price that you're currently getting energy at, but it can be cost effective. And the last thing I would say is you'll be surprised at the growth of awareness around sustainability and demand for sustainable products. The kind of reaction you can get from your customers if you're considered and sustainable and you have that sustainable image, that in and of itself could make a business case for you. So those are the couple of things that I would say is advice.
So just to recap, be brave, do your research, and connect with your customers sincerely. Great, thank you, Asad.
Local contact.
What are your, of course. Cheta, what are your bits of advice for businesses in terms of decision making?
Okay, so just as Asad has said, I mean, the time is now. The time is now. There's no better time to start up the talk about sustainability. And just like Asad said, it's being brave about it and starting the journey. I would say that because, I mean, we're one of the youngest who have started that step. But beyond that, I would also say that it's also organizations also begin to workforce, teach their workforce about being sustainable. Now, organizations are in communities, but it's the individuals, the employees who work in this that take the message home, that take this campaign of sustainability back into the communities where they work, where they live. And there's nothing like somebody who has the moral courage, the moral capacity to be able to drive home this message. Now, it's not just enough saying that the organizations are doing it, but we have to encourage our employees to also become sustainable. Let them take it as a personal cause for them and then drive this campaign home in whichever communities they find themselves. I think if we're able to do this and our employees are able to reach out to as many people as possible, the world will be a lot better place for us, and we'll be able to achieve the SDG goals faster than we think we can. So thank you.
So again, just in summation, thank you, Cheta. So summation, engage with employees, information, communication, education at that level, and then ripple effect into wider society. Excellent. Ombulani, your top tips or advice for businesses looking at embedding this in their decision making? What couple of things you can say?
Okay, so the two speakers have mentioned quite a lot, but just in step 1, 2, 3, 4 would be for organizations or businesses to identify what are the needs, considering the local content, local environment, what has your country signed on to in terms of climate action, and how do you fit into that national agenda? What is the role of your organization? Then again, in terms of getting, board buy-in, very critical, and the board having, the governance oversight for all of this. And then next would be carrying along all critical stakeholders, be it your employees or your customers or your partners. Then it would also help, to produce decision relevant knowledge and information. And finally will be to encourage and facilitate the use of all of this together. Thank you.
Great, fantastic. So again, talking about playing a responsible role in society and connecting with a national agenda, so not reinventing the wheel effectively, which makes sense. Mohammed, what are your top tips and advice for business?
Well, basically, emphasize on what my colleagues here said. Information is there, have the courage and take the step. What I'd like to add is basically the opportunity is there. A lot of organizations, big organizations, they look for small businesses that are more sustainable in their approach and environmentally friendly, and they actually sometimes struggle to find good companies that would provide their goods and services considering that they're protecting the environment in different aspects. And you can see it all around, of course. So it gives you better value as a business and a better opportunities, of course, to provide your goods or services for those big organizations, of course.
Great, fantastic. So I think the message there is don't be afraid to look at embedding all of these principles into your business, because the business case is already there, the math is there, and the support mechanism is all around you. This is like yourself as examples, but also Global Compact. Thank you. Okay, so really interesting stuff. So I've got one final comment, I guess. It's a moment of reflection because that's what 2019 has taught us. And as we move towards what effectively is being called a big reset, I'd just like to ask everyone for a short comment, reflect for a moment and just share quickly with us, what does the world look like for you in 2030? So, Ombalani, what does 2030 look like for you? Wish list. Tell us how you see 2030.
Thank you. That's an interesting and exciting question. So for me, I see 2030 as a year that would look back and say, wow, it's good that we took the decisions that we took today, right? That we took in 2015 about the SDGs, because I want to imagine that the carbon emissions would have by far gone down from where we are now. So the air we breathe will be cleaner, nature will be recovering, we will have a green and livable city. The use of single-use plastics will be a distant memory. There will be clean electricity that will dominate the energy sector. There would have been a lot of deep decarbonizing efforts. I will, people will be healthier, right? Because we have a better world and a cleaner environment. Thank you.
I love that vision, and I love the energy with which you're sharing that vision as well. Let's hope that comes true. Cheta, what does 2030 look like for you? And don't hold back.
Well, for me, it's not more different from what's said. Really, for me, it's a cleaner world. A world with no poverty. Because the truth is this: if after all we've said, we still have the issues of poverty, we're really not going anywhere. So a world where poverty would have been eradicated, the girl child is able to go to and impact more in her community. Businesses have the courage to, at that point in time, everybody is equal, and there's no rich, there's no poor, we're all at the same level. But most importantly, I can live to be 100 years old and see my grandchildren and their own children. I think that's what 2030 would be looking like for me.
Excellent, amazing. I hope that happens. Mohammed, what does 2030 look like for you?
Yani, if you think about it, we're living in this planet. It's our home by the end of the day. No one of us would accept having a dirty home. Cleaner for our children. Technically speaking, we want to stop using fossil fuel and maybe just utilizing renewable sources all the way. I hope that day no more fossil fuels are present, and no more a classic way of, let's say, consuming our products. So more circular economic models should be arise where we can reuse rather than just have a huge pile of waste and trying to find a way to, let's say, get rid of it. So basically a cleaner world, agreeing with my colleagues, breathable air, of course, everywhere, and eradicating poverty. That's a definite objective that everyone is seeking. By the end of the day, this is our big home, and we want to make sure that we live with the basic needs, which include water, food, and a respectful life, of course, that equates for both males and females and various nationalities, of course, that are there.
Great. I love what you said. This is our home. I think that rings true. Asad, what does 2030 look like for you?
Great question, Zubair, and I think everyone's giving brilliant answers. I do, however, think that there's a difference between what I want it to look like and what I think it's going to look like. And I think, for me, the first thing...
Okay, well, say both.
Got it. So I think for me, the first thing is I see solar power as ubiquitous. I see battery prices going down and solar power with batteries just flooding the market in 5 years, 6 years time. And by 2030, we're going to have it everywhere. And I think in addition to that, there's going to be autonomous cars everywhere, which is going to change the landscape of our cities. Doesn't really relate to sustainability, but I do see that. I don't think there's going to be any funding for coal and fossil fuels. I think funding for those projects are going to stop because everyone's going to be looking at their bottom lines in a different manner, and lending will be totally different. I think there's going to be a large push for less waste generation. Less plastic usage and more circular products will become the norm. I do see closed loop water systems as well. I think that's going to become more common. Water usage, pollution, water pollution will keep reducing as it has already. The one thing that I don't see happening, and this is what I wish would happen, but I don't see it happening, is I don't see wealth inequality is reducing much. I think a lot of work needs to be done on that front. I think with robotics and automation and a lot of extreme globalization, I think that, and just the way the economies in the world are working and the economic systems work, I see that there's wealth accumulation that's going to keep happening, and we need to really work harder to avoid that from happening. Lastly, I just want to add, I see a lot of transparency also coming into global supply chains because of the advent of the blockchain. I think in 10 years' time, things like, we see now there's action being taken against China in the Xinjiang province because of what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims. And I think that's going to be much more transparent because everyone will be expected to be on the blockchain and be more transparent.
Of course, yeah. Sure. Great. Some really interesting insights. Naomi, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear.
So I want to ask you the same question as well. What does 2030 look like for you?
Whoa, I didn't know you were going to ask me. But yeah, 2030
no,
looks
that's why I asked you.
2030 looks promising for me. As a strong advocate of the SDGs, I look forward to a world where we would have achieved the 17 goals, or we would have achieved almost all of it, if not all. And if we do that, like Cheta said, we'll be able to end poverty, which will help us to end hunger. There will be improved health conditions and good health and well-being across the world. And we'll be able to solve world issues, hopefully. And yeah, I look forward to a green world and interesting 2030. Thank you.
Fantastic. So brilliant. I mean, some amazing answers and clearly lots to talk about. We've gone way over our allotted 1 hour time slot, but that's okay. That's exactly what these conversations are about, that they're not specific to a time, although I know some of the colleagues will be watching their clock. Still lots more to discuss, but thank you for being part of the inaugural hour of the Global Impact Forum. We hope the discussion sparks new ideas for people listening online and watching the recording later, and also for our panelists. I hope this has challenged perceptions, energized all of you for the rest of the forum. We still have 1 day, 16 hours and 40 minutes left of the Uniting Business Live Forum. And of course, I hope it's inspired others to take action. The conversations don't stop here. That's correct, Naomi. Do you want to just add?
Yeah. So thanks, Zubair. I'll say, like you mentioned, the conversation shouldn't stop here. So we encourage our guests today to keep the conversations alive. And for our participants who are listening in, this forum presents an opportunity to be part of the conversation, to also learn and take actions in your various capacities and countries to continue to address environmental issues and the SDGs in general. Together, we can all work together to create the world that we want. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, you heard it from Naomi and our panelists. Let's keep the conversations alive. We're approaching the decade of action. There's clearly a lot of work still left to do, and we all need to work together. We all have a responsibility, everyone, everywhere, businesses, governments, individuals, civil society alike, myself, yourself, everyone, we all have something to offer. So I'm going to invite everyone back now to the main stage for the first plenary, which has just started. Thank you to all our participants for spending time today with us. And for people that want to connect with our panelists and our speakers, you can do so directly by finding them on LinkedIn. For everyone else who's staying on, there's still plenty of other sessions going on, lots of networking. Don't forget to tweet. Don't forget to post on social media using the hashtag Uniting Business and Decade of Action. Thank you once again to all of our panelists. It's been a pleasure. I've learned a great deal. I hope you have too as well. You've been inspirational, and I look forward to carrying on these conversations with you in due course. Thank you very much. Goodbye.